Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished HR professional from Nigeria, Moyosola Olalekan. Moyosola, welcome to the show.
Yeah, you're welcome, sir.
Moyosola is the lead human resource and recruitment consultant at the Moyosola Olalekan Outsourcing Services. So let's start with asking you what kind of work do you do?
Okay, thank you for inviting me to your show, The Brand Called You. So what I do is I simply bridge the gap between job seekers and the employers of labor in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
And our talent acquisition spectrum ranges from fresh graduates to senior professionals in several industries. We've had to recruit people in the architecture industry, the education sector, hospitality, retail, and even currently we're working with a cybersecurity organization for their recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
We also do expatriates based on client demands. And I think it's been an awesome 2 years in business.
Wonderful. So, as you say, you bridge the gap between people who are looking for jobs and people who are looking for employees. What is the process you follow?
Okay, so what we do is we simply engage technology to ensure that we get the right candidates for every position.
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn is something that we use a lot, mm-hmm. as well as several social media platforms, mm-hmm. and our website. Then in Nigeria, there are several other job websites where, mm-hmm. we post vacant positions, and we are sure that we get the right candidates from all those sources.
Wonderful. So is HR outsourcing the way of the future for talent management or talent seekers?
So let me say this, that HR outsourcing has actually existed a long time ago. And I would say that for very smart CEOs, very smart managers who want to focus on the core of their business functions, they may be looking at positioning or outsourcing their HR functions or some part of the HR functions. For example, outsourcing the recruitment part of it to very competent professionals like me, mm-hmm. to handle for them. Mm-hmm. And because recruitment itself takes a long time, it takes time. Right. So, you want to manage your time, then you are looking at HR outsourcing.
Mm. And one of the challenges that is faced by a lot of people who hire is that they find somebody who joins for 2 or 3 months and then is not found suitable. How do you handle such a problem?
Okay, that comes to play a lot. So firstly, I would say it has to do with the organizational culture. Mm-hmm. So the culture of an organization is very important, and it can be perceived even at the beginning of the recruitment process. Mm-hmm. So let me give an instance. For example, while currently we are in the second quarter of the year 2022, and mm-hmm. I'll let you know that we have about 90% of the candidates that we've seen so far either mm-hmm. want a fully remote job or they want to work hybrid. Mm-hmm. So very smart organizations who are looking to recruit key industry professionals, mm-hmm. who take their business to the next level must be looking at also structuring their businesses in a way that will fit the market, because the market is supposed to decide what it wants, not that the company or the mm-hmm. business deciding. And in this case, whereby you employ someone today and the person is not found suitable tomorrow, is a game of what the individual wanted. Mm-hmm. or what the organization also wanted. So this has to do with, for organizations who are looking at retaining the right employees or also attracting the right ones, they may also look at how to structure their businesses currently in a way that fits every desire of the employee that they're actually getting right now. Mm-hmm. So there must be for example, I had someone who recently told me she doesn't want to take up a job that is not fully remote. So that's it.
So how are you using technology in the whole process of recruitment?
So technology for us is very important. Currently, our organization is fully virtual.
Sorry, is it fully?
Yes, our organization, we run Moyosola Olalekan Outsourcing Services as a fully virtual organization. Yes, and we have our staff spread across Nigeria, in the western part of Nigeria and some other parts of Nigeria. So we all work remotely.
Okay.
So I'll say that, and all the interviews that we run for candidates and even for organizations, we also run them virtually. So thanks to COVID-19.
Okay.
Yes.
And you mentioned that, it also something, getting people depends on the culture of the organization. What do you look at as the culture? What do you define culture as?
Okay, culture, I would say culture is another tools. We all know that, and culture is the belief and values that systems are run on. And culture is something that you rather experience than you are taught. Every organization's culture starts even from the phone call, from the emails that you receive. You begin to perceive the kind of organizational culture that any organization wants as rather. And I also say that culture starts from the top and to the bottom. So the leaders are the ones who must create a vibrant organizational culture for themselves.
And when you work with startups, how does a startup founder define culture? How can he get a good culture in the organization, or he or she?
Okay, first of all, I'll say they need to know what the goal the organization wants to achieve. So I will ask them, what goal do you want to achieve? That will determine the kind of culture that you run. So what goal do they want to achieve? Then it sets the culture from the top, which from the managers, then it runs down to the employees and other, employees of the organization.
You mentioned in the beginning that you work with young people as well as more senior people. I would love to get your thoughts on how are the expectations of young leaders, the millennials and the Gen Zs, how are they changing when it comes to working for another company?
Okay. So let me just give my, so for the Gen Z between the age of 10 to 25, I'm sure. And millennials, I think 26 to 41 years old. So working with these people is, you have to exercise a lot of patience while working, especially with the Gen Z.
Right.
So for example, as a recruiter, you send an email for a interview with a Gen Z, they're just getting comunicado. And or they attend the interview, the first stage, maybe the second stage, and by the time they are to meet the client at their office, they just don't attend the interview. So when you let them know that, okay, why didn't you communicate? So you hear them say, oh, they don't want to work, they don't want to face the Lagos traffic, for example, they want to do the virtual work. So I would say working with them, you have to exercise a lot of patience. You have to exercise open communication, and you have to also be clear in every information that you are giving to them. So clarity is very important, openness and communication.
Wonderful. And you also mentioned, about the pandemic. How has the pandemic impacted your work?
Okay, so let me say this. First of all, pandemic has driven my business to what it is today, thanks to pandemic. During the pandemic, I got admitted to the Cherry Blair Foundation for Women in Business, and I was assigned to a mentor based in Mexico. And all through the pandemic, we ran that's our sections every month. And that's where my business actually began.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we are a full-fledged HR recruitment organization.
Mm-hmm.
And very soon we'll also be moving to become an HR tech solution company where we'll be developing several softwares for several organizations. So pandemic has helped my business to grow, to fly. We can run a virtual organization a fully virtual organization because of the pandemic, which would not have been acceptable maybe 2020 or even 2018. So I'm thankful to the pandemic.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, the pandemic has also impacted human resources in different ways. One is work from home. And then, of course, everybody's talking about the great resignation. Tell me about your thoughts on how is work from home affecting organizations? Because a lot of people now prefer to work from their homes rather than come to office.
Yes, yes, that's true. That's true. A lot of people want to, work from home, and rather than go to physical, face the traffic at whatever city they are based in. For example, for a mother like me, I'd rather even prefer to get a job if I was looking for a job, to get a job that is fully remote, because I have, have 3 kids, I have to take care of them. I'm thankful to the pandemic that the pandemic has actually made work for mothers more flexible. So if you look at the pandemic, I would say that organizations have to look at how to structure or restructure their businesses in a way to fit the entire, for example, okay, now that's what they need to restructure. There's a need for restructuring. That's what I would say for organizations.
Wonderful. And from an HR leader's perspective, how does she or he manage people so many people working from home? I mean, how do they determine whether the person is actually working?
Well, I'm sure that most of organizations, we have softwares that actually, ensure that they do all those checks. I'm very sure most organizations we have those. And again, aside from that, there should be milestones. What we use milestones. What are the goals to be achieved this week? What are we looking to achieve maybe in 2 days' time, in 3 days' time? And we start maybe the new week on Monday. What are we hoping to close by Friday or at the middle of the week? So if all those milestones are achieved or not achieved, I think that's the way to measure the performance and the work of every team member.
Okay.
Yeah.
My next question to you is for startups. I'm sure you work a lot with startups. What are some of the mistakes a lot of startup entrepreneurs make when they start hiring people?
Okay, so one thing I've seen is, let me just give this scenario. Let me give this scenario. So you realize that your company is due. So you employ for example, you employ an account clerk when your company is already due for a financial controller. Because you don't have the right structure in place to tell you when it's time to get a financial controller. And that happens when an entrepreneur himself or a startup wants to run everything by himself, he wants to be the HR, he wants to be the manager, he wants to be the salesperson. That you're starting small doesn't mean that you shouldn't structure your company and employ the people who can actually fit into your organization. You can actually get people who either work as volunteers or can actually. So one thing in recruitment, 5 things you must really look at when you are recruiting people. We as a recruitment consultants and also organizations seeking to hire the right employees, they must look at these 5 things. Capacity is very important. Competency is very important. Skill is very important. Experience and character. Those 5 things must be looked at while any organization wants to recruit. So it's not about whether it's my mother's brother, is my father's sister. You must your recruitment process must be devoid of sentiments because of your business. If your business is supposed to be a running concern, if you're supposed to make profit and maximize profit, and if you're supposed to achieve the reason why you are in business, you're not supposed to attach sentiments in your business operations. And one thing you should not attach business sentiment is in your recruitment process, your hiring process. Your hiring process is everything that drives the organization either forward or 20 steps backward. So, yeah.
But you're so right when you say that, don't bring your cousin or your cousin, brother or anything. But that is where a lot of people find most comfort. If I've got a challenging situation, I need a good CFO, let me get someone who I know in the role. So how do I make a change?
Okay, so what my advice, this has never played well for most of my clients. Most of the clients that so we've worked with a startup last year that a retail business, and that started off, and we recruited over 800 staff or more, I can't remember, for their organization. And I'll let you know that so one thing is you can let the person you want to recruit pass through the recruitment organization. Let them still pass through. Let the recruitment organization assess that person and know where his strength lies. So then the recruiter can tell you, okay, this is where this person's strength lies. This is where you should put the person. This is where you should not put the person. But if you have the sentiment and just, okay, this person can run as an HR manager.
Okay. Yeah. And from the young individual joining the organization, how have expectations from the employee changed about their organization?
Sorry, can you come again, please?
If I'm a 21, 22-year-old person joining a new company and you get me a job in that company, what are my expectations? Earlier it was whatever my boss says is right. And I keep working. 42 years ago, when I joined the private sector, I used to see that. Today, the young people have a very, very clear mind of their own. What are your thoughts on that? Okay,
so I'll say that for like working with a Gen Z, if you're going to be working with a Gen Z, for example, you must understand, first of all, the way they think. They like to be independent. They like flexibility. They like their space.
Okay.
So for you to be able to work effectively with that kind of person or those set of generations, you must be flexible yourself. You must be ready to accept the change. You must be open to change. You accept the change that comes with employing different generations in your organization. Let me give an instance. For example, like me now, I like to move around. I like to have Gen Zs or younger generation or younger colleagues around me. For one thing, that's the way I get my refueling and my motivation for the next big thing. Because let me give an instance now. Okay, so we got this job recruitment to do for a cybersecurity organization based in Nigeria, but spread also to several African countries. And we've been running this project. It's going to the second month now. So we needed to get some tech people, and one of the volunteers that work with me, she said, okay, Miss Moyo, why don't we run it on Twitter? Let's do a Twitter thread. And I'm like, okay. And she took my phone, we ran everything, we posted a Twitter thread. We had about 5 posts. I don't know how to do a Twitter thread. I've never done it before. And she taught me that day how to do it, and we did it. And guess what? Overnight, my account grew by over, say, 135% overnight. Overnight. I had followers. The tweets became like went viral, so to say, and a lot of comments, though you still have bad comments that come in, but at least people got to know that, yes, this is what I do, and I was actually recruiting. So I think
wonderful.
We need to find a way to work with them. That's
okay. So my last question to you now, and this is for the many people who will listen to our conversation. From the perspective of someone who knows human resources, what would be 3 lessons you would give to young people who are wanting to start their lives in the corporate world or as entrepreneurs?
Okay, so let me just say this. First of all, I'll say understand yourself, understand your purpose, get to know that your job is not your job alone. Your business is not just a business. You must be fulfilling a purpose. You must be running on an assignment. So for me, my business or my job is an assignment I always want to fulfill. So I'll let everyone know also that that's one thing they should also be looking out for. Secondly, career transitioning. Either you're starting on your career or you are at the peak of your career or at the middle part of your career.
Yeah.
I'll say this, for example, like that career transition, every career has a lifespan. So you must know when. I'm thankful that I actually knew when to actually move into business. So I have an online course that actually takes care of that, a career transition, in how to fully career transition, either into business or you are in a set, maybe you are in a particular stage of your career where you feel you need to move into another field. Yes, I also do that kind of coaching. So I would encourage you, anyone, not to remain on a spot. There's always the next big thing. There's always something new at every point in time. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, so on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. It was such a pleasure talking to you about human resources and the great work you're doing in Nigeria. Thank you for talking to me about so many different things and giving me your perspectives on so many different aspects of the human resources function. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate this interview. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.